Hello everyone, Richard here again. On a previous video, I showed you how to install the third-party firmware from DD-WRT.com on a TP-Link WR940N router. That's this router right here. In this video, what I'm going to show you is how to reverse that process. So I'm going to show you how to take the third-party firmware off and revert the router back to its stock firmware. The first thing we need to do is go get the firmware for this router at the TP-Link site. So just open up a browser and go to tplink.com, so tplink and then .com. Hit that enter. And I have three TP-Link routers, and all of them this procedure works on. Though this video is specific to the WR940N. It works on my 741 and on my C9 as well. So, it can be adapted for other TP-Link routers. TP-Link routers. I don't know how Netgear or anybody else does it, but this is how TP-Link does the reverting back to DD-WRT. So here we're going to go to support. So tplink.com, support. And vital importance here, we're going to hit on Download Center. Vital importance here is that you get the right firmware for your router. And I'll tell you what that is here in a second. This is a WR940N, so let's go find it here on the list. Go through it. For some reason I'm missing it. Just type in 940 here, Control F. There it is. So click on the TL-WR940N, and as you can see, it looks exactly like my router, but notice here, this is the key here. Please choose the hardware version. Now, don't go by what's on your router or what DD-WRT is telling you. Look on the bottom of your router and verify the version type. If there's a sticker on it, it will say the WR940N, and then it'll say V of some kind, right? And if it's V3.2, then it's a version 3. If it's V5.4, it's a version 5. The point after doesn't matter. The 5 is what matters, or the 3.2, whatever. The V and the number, right? In my case, I've got a V3, so I'm going to go here to V3. And again, I verified that by looking at the sticker on the bottom of the router. Don't go by what's on the web page from DD-WRT, because it may be wrong. And you need to flash the correct firmware file into your router for this to work. You do the wrong one, and you may have a piece of plastic that does nothing but look at you and say, what? So don't brick your router by using the wrong firmware, all right? I'm being very, very cautious here and for you to understand how important this is. Very important. So we've got all these things here, manual, blah, blah, blah. We're going to go here to the firmware tab. And again, here is all the things that they warn you about. I strongly urge you to read about this and how this all works. I'm not responsible for anything you do wrong here, or if this goes wrong for you. I can't just look at the bottom of your router and say this is the right version, whatever. On my case, it's a V3. So what I'm going to do is download the firmware, and that's this link right here. So we're going to click that, download it. And I'm going to save it in a new folder. I'm just going to call it revert. Oops. Revert, and we're going to, because we're reverting to stock, revert to stock and TP-Link. What the heck? You put it where you want. This is where I'm putting it. And we'll save it. And notice that I believe it's a zip file. Let's see, yeah, it is. It says compressed zip file. So I'll show you how to handle that here in a second. So hit, we've created the folder. We're going to open it, and then we're going to save the file. Boom, it's in. So let's go take a look at that. You can go here to open the folder right off. So that's what we're going to do. It takes me back to downloads, revert to stock TP-Link. And here you see the file. And if you expand it out here, you'll see the full name. It's a crazy name, but it doesn't matter. What you're going to do here is, and notice it says V3. So verify that that's the right one for your router. Right-click it, choose Extract All. Okay, and then you see, it's going to tell you select a destination file. Choose the default. In my case, it will be in the same folder. So I'm going to hit extract, and then it opens up the file, okay, or the folder with all the stuff in it. So if you go back here, you'll see that it created a non-zip folder. You double click on that, it shows you how to upgrade it, so on and so forth. And it also has the bin file. That is the actual firmware for your router. All right, so we'll leave that alone here for a second because you'll see why. We're going to come back to this in a sec, but minimize it. All right, step one, we're done. Next one is we need to go and get something called TFTP software. So just type in TFTPD, and do a Google search on that. And then you get, a whole TFTP server, TFTPD32. That's where we want to go. Now, you've got options here. This is 20-year-old software. This stuff works great. I've never had a problem with it. You've got an option to use 32-bit software, or you get an option to use 64-bit. Choose what you wish. I'm just going to choose the latest one, which currently is 4.64. Of course, that'll change in time. And we want to install the software. So we're going to click. I'm going to click on the first link here, direct link for TFTPD64. Now, if 64 doesn't work, 64-bit version, this is what this means. If this doesn't work for you, download a 32-bit version. If that doesn't work for you, I don't know what to tell you. It should work for you. So hit save the file. And again, we're going to put it in the same recovery, revert folder that we created, revert to stock TP-Link. So here we go. And I'm just going to put it in here, save. Now, after it's done saving, which is fairly quick. If you look up here, you can go back here and just go to the folder again. And there you see TFTP64 setup. We're going to double click on that. We have to install it. And then say yes to this question. And then agree to the license agreement. And just go with the defaults on all this stuff. Next, install. And that's it, close. Okay, now at this point, if we minimize everything, you have a shortcut, should have a shortcut to TFTPD64 on your desktop, okay? So now we more or less have the right software and firmware ready to be put back into this router. Next thing we need to do is to disconnect from Wi-Fi and connect to your router physically, okay? You never want to do any firmware flashing through Wi-Fi. It's radio signals. Anything could go wrong. And if something goes wrong in your flashing of your router, again, it turns into a plastic piece of brick, basically. So that's what they call it. You brick your router and no longer works. Now, there's ways to recover that, but do you want to go through that just because you went through Wi-Fi? No, you don't want to, okay? So let's do a few things here. Let's right-click the Wi-Fi icon, open a network and internet settings. And I'll show you why we're doing this in a sec. Here we're going to go to Network and Sharing Center and change adapter settings. Now the reason I'm going in here is I want to show you how to find out where your router actually is if you don't know its IP address. I assume most of you do if you're doing this level of work on your router, which is like uninstalling DD-WRT, but maybe somebody else put it in your router and you want to take it off. So right here, we're going to right-click Wi-Fi and hit Status. Now under Status, you're going to go to Details. Now, what you're looking for here is the IP address of your default gateway. And you can see it right here. In my case, it's 192.168.1.1. Now, why is that important? Well, because that shows you where your router currently is. So write that down. I'm not sure whether it's going to be all that important, but let's write it down just in case, okay? So something else I'm going to show you too, and this is why also it's important. So 192.168.1.1, you can put it into Notepad, whatever you want, okay? So next thing we're going to do here, close this all off. We're still connected to it. We're going to disconnect from it in a second. Okay, so just so you know, if you put that in right now, .1.1, you'll see that that's the router that I'm using here. So I'll just go into it, show you something quick. If you know how to get into your router, if you have the username and the password to get in there, you know, you can do this. Otherwise, don't worry about it. You can still revert it back to stock without having the username and password for it, okay? So you're just going to clear the router out of this firmware if that's what you want to do. So here you go to administration, and under backup, you may want to do this if you're coming back. So I've currently got this router set up to do VPN through DD-WRT, and you know, instead of it wiping out the router and then, you know, putting it back in and then putting all these settings back in, I can save the configuration for this DD-WRT, and then, you know, anytime that I revert back to DD-WRT firmware, I can return the configuration just by picking the file and restoring it. Now this only works in DD-WRT firmware with that config file. The TP-Link stock firmware has the same capability, but you can't use the files, one file on one and one file on the other. So in other words, if you generate the config file with this firmware, it's only good for this firmware. If you generate it with TP-Link, it's only good with that firmware, okay? So that's how you may want to do this. All right, so that's quickly how you get to your router. And next thing you're going to do is right-click your, we're going to open up the network connection. Now, if you're not connected through Wi-Fi, you don't need to do this. But if you are, click the Wi-Fi blue button and turn it off. You do not want to do this through Wi-Fi. Period. End of story. Never. So turn it off, then you know you're not connected through anything in Wi-Fi. The other danger is you may be flashing the wrong device on Wi-Fi. And the way I'm going to show you next, to physically connect the router, there's no option. You're going to be connected only to the router, and it's only going to be connected that way, okay? So next in this step, what we're going to do is go back to those to your network icon, right-click it, choose Open Network and Internet Sharing. Again, Network and Sharing Center. Back to change adapter settings, and you can see here that everything's disconnected now, and that's another way of verifying that. But here, we're going to connect the router through the Ethernet port, so your computer has to have an Ethernet port, and if it does, it'll be showing up here. I'm going to right-click it, and then we're going to choose Properties on it. Okay? And then in here, we're going to go to Internet Protocol version 4, TCP/IP, so double-click on that. And you can see that it's set to obtain the IP address automatically. We need to change this. The DNS numbers don't matter. Whatever yours are, don't worry about it. Here's what counts, okay? We're going to change this to use the following IP address. And it has to be this IP address, okay? 192.168.0.66, okay? And when you hit enter here, it'll give you this error, but it'll automatically populate the subnet mask here if you hit enter. Okay, it's 255.255.255.0. The default gateway doesn't matter. We're going to come back in here and reset this back to what it was before, which was obtain IP address automatically. After we're all done, we're only setting it for this purpose, and that is to revert the router. So here we're going to hit OK and OK again. All right. At this point, the computer is ready to, connect to that router and do this process. But prior to doing that, I'm going to show you how to we're going to physically connect the router to the computer, okay, and then we'll go on to the next step. What I'm going to do is use just the patch cable, and this patch cable is a LAN cable that came with the actual router itself, and we're going to plug it in and physically connect it to my laptop. So the ports we're going to use to connect to are any of the orange ports or the LAN ports or Ethernet ports as they call them. And pick the one you want. It doesn't matter which one you pick, just as long as it's in the orange ports. Then the other side of the cable we're going to plug into the LAN port on this laptop. If you have a computer, choose the LAN port on the computer. Either way, you're going to physically connect to the router this way. So again, cable to the LAN ports and on the LAN port on your computer. So we've got the router correctly physically connected to the computer. Next thing we're going to do is open up the TFTP 64 program. So double click it. And if you got Windows Defender Firewall and it says it blocks some of the features of this app, just make sure before you close this warning that you check both of these boxes to check. So private networks such as my home and network, you're basically allowing access to everything to this program because we don't want it blocking communication between this program and the router because it won't work. So after you've checked both boxes off, click Allow Access. And you may or may not get this box, it depends. There we go. And we're going to bring up TFTP D program 64. Here it is running. If you scroll down here, you should see the setting that we put on the network card, 192.168.0.66. So there it is. And after that, what we're going to do, and you don't need to pick it, just look and make sure it's there. And then we go to Browse. And what we're doing here is we're setting the path that this program is going to serve files from. So we need to tell this program where the file we want to serve is at, and that is the firmware that we downloaded from TP-Link. So I'm just going to click on Browse here. Go to the download directory. Of course, we're going to go to the revert to stock TP-Link directory where we downloaded the firmware, and then to the folder where the firmware resides. That's where we extracted it, and that's this crazy looking folder here. And click OK. You go show it wherever you put the firmware, you show this program where it is. Okay, hit OK. And at this point, I'm going to show you a little trick. And the reason I'm showing you, I could just tell you the file to change the name of the file to this and it would work. But I'm going to show you how you can find out for yourself what the router is actually looking for as far as a file to restore the router to its default settings. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is because you may not be using this on a WR940N. You might have a 741 or some other TP-Link program, TP-Link router. And by using this trick, you'll know which file, what the file name that it's looking for is, and at that point, you'll be able to easily change the file name to the right name. But again, this will make sense here in a second. So first thing we need to do here is take the router, see if I can show it to you, and besides the power button, there's a reset button. Now, if you're not using this router, it might be somewhere else, but what you're going to need to do is hold, the router's off right now, but we're going to hold the power button and the reset button at the same time. First, but not quite yet, here I want you to click on the Log Viewer tab here, and you'll see something here happen when we do this, okay? So we're going to hold the power button down and the reset button at the same time. And then let go. And you see what's happening here? The log file viewer is saying, hey, something's calling for something, okay? So you don't need to really hold it that long. You can hold it up to about 5 seconds. But if you have it here on the log viewer, as soon as you see data going through, then you can just stop after you see that. Just let go of it. So let's do something here. Let me maximize this. So you can see that the router was asking for data. And what it was looking for said read request for file WR940N DV6_TP_recovery.bin. Okay, so what we're going to do here is hit the copy button, open up Notepad. Like I said, I could have just given you this, done this for you, but I want to show you, like if you're using a 741, that file name would be different. Whatever router, TP-Link router you're using to do this with, the file name is going to be different. So by looking at the log viewer and doing what I just did, you're always going to find out what file the actual router is looking for. Okay, so I hit the copy button right here, and then back here I just hit paste, and we've got all this information in here. But what really counts is right here. The file that the router is looking for is called, or wanting, is WR940N DV6_TP, and I'll put this in the video description below, TP recovery.bin. So highlight that and copy that. And now what we're going to do is go over here to the file browser, go to our directory where we downloaded that file, so revert to stock here, and then to the crazy named folder. Now here we're going to just copy this file, so just right click it and hit copy and then paste again right in here. And it'll just create a copy of that file. That's fine, right? This says copy bin. Now, I'm going to right click this file again and hit rename. And we're going to rename it to this file here. So I'm going to highlight what I highlighted over here, right click it, hit copy, right click this, rename, select it all. So that's Control A if you want to do it with a keyboard, or just highlight the whole thing. And then right click it again and hit paste. And then hit enter. Now we have a file called exactly what the router is looking for, WR940N DV6_TP recovery.bin. Now if you're using a 740 a router, more than likely that's what it's going to be. But again, it might be different because see, this one says, mine is specific. It says DV6, though, even though the router itself, really, the sticker on the bottom of the router says it's a version 3. So I'm not sure what happened there, but regardless, that's the file it's looking for. And that's why I did that trick, because who knows what your router is looking for. And by doing the log file view, copy, and then doing this, you're going to get the right file number or file name every time. So now we know what it's called. We've changed the file to that file that it's looking for. And at this point, I'm just going to hit clear here. We're going to stay on the log viewer file. And we're going to do that same procedure again. I'm going to shut it down. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah, there we go. Power and then the reset button at the same time. So I'm going to hold the reset button first and then hit the power button, okay? It's a little hard to do because these buttons are so close by, but you don't need to keep holding down the power button. Just hold down the reset button until you see the log file start populating. So I'm doing that right now. Okay, hold on. There we go. So I'm holding it down and powering it up at the same time. And there you go. Once you see this happening, just take your finger off the reset. Okay, so you see that the TFTP program says, hey, I just sent the file over, I've connected, and it's now, the router should be doing what this one is doing right now, which is the lights are blinking. Just let it go. I don't know if it's going to reboot on its own or not, but yep, there it goes. Just rebooted. And it'll come up. Goes through a boot sequence as always. And you see down here that the network icon just blinked to an off state there. There we go. See that? So the router's going through its regular boot sequence. Okay. So at this point, we just flashed the recovery file or the stock firmware back into the router. It should be ready to go. Let's go over here to our network icon and right click it, go to open network and internet settings. And then we're going to go to network and sharing center, back to change adapter settings, and right click that, go to properties. We'll go into the Ethernet, and then double click the Internet Protocol version 4, and just hit the radio button up here for obtain an IP address automatically. If you have numbers in here, don't worry about them. You didn't need to change them in the first place, but if you want, put them back to obtain DNS server automatically. I'm not messing with mine. I'm leaving those alone. Those weren't important anyway. This is what was important. Here we're going to hit OK, and OK again. Okay, and you can see that the computer is like, okay, network 2 now. Now, what we're going to do here is right-click this and then choose status. Okay, and it says we're connected at 100 megabits per second, blah, blah, blah. Let's go to details, and you see we've got an IP address of 192.168.0.100, right? So at this point, we know the default gateway is 192.168.0.1. So if we go to that IP address, we should see the router. So 192.168.0.1, enter, and look at that. The stock TP-Link router firmware greets us. So now we type in the default username, which is in TP-Link's default username is admin, all lowercase, and the password is admin again, all lowercase. That's the first thing you need to change, okay? So we'll go and do that. You go through the quick setup. You can go through this if you wish, but I'm just going to hit exit here and go to System Tools and Password. And first thing you're going to do is change this. Please, please, please. First thing you do, change this. So the original username is admin. The password is going to be admin again. You can change the username to whatever you want, and the password to something different than admin, please. You don't want to leave it that way. Your router will be hacked, and who knows what they'll do with it or do to it. Here, after you've done that, just hit save. Helps if you type the password incorrectly twice, and I'll do that. There we go, and we'll click on save here. There we go. And now it asks you to re-log in with a different username and password. Verify you can do that. And there you go. Ready to go. At this point, I leave you to it. Your DD-WRT firmware has been removed from your router. You've set a default password to your TP-Link router. You've set your password to the TP-Link router from the default password. At this point, just configure it any way you want. Go to Wi-Fi, go to wherever you want to set this up, or even use the quick setup procedure if you wish. But remember, first thing first, change that username and password on logging in. Do not leave it on the default. Your router will be vulnerable, okay? Almost forgot one quick thing we need to do. Let's move my window over here. Go down to your network icon down here. Click it. Don't right-click it. Just click it and turn your Wi-Fi back on. And if you need to manually connect to something, then manually connect to it. But otherwise, it'll just connect on its own. Okay, that's all you need to do to revert your WR940N TP-Link router from DD-WRT back to the stock firmware. That's it for my video on removing the DD-WRT third-party firmware off the TP-Link WR940N router. If you like this video and it helped you out in some way, do me a huge favor. Click on the like button here on the bottom right-hand corner and give me a big thumbs up. That helps my channel, it helps my video, and I greatly appreciate it. Also up here, you'll see a picture of me. That picture is a subscription link. If you click on that picture, you'll be subscribed to my channel. As part of the process of subscribing, you'll see a bell icon. Click on the bell icon and you'll be notified every time that I put up a new video, and then you can watch it at your own leisure. Once again, and like always, I want to thank you for watching and for your time.